Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show. Good morning. Welcome to the show. I've been listening to a lot of our shows, and a lot of people are playing off that. Welcome to the show. Love it. Tuesday, I almost said Wednesday. It's Tuesday, September 17th. We are 10 days from my birthday. That's it. Nothing that crazy. 10 days from my birthday, and it's Tuesday. I woke up this morning, thought it was Monday. Someone reminded me it was Tuesday when they got into the office. And then when I just started this, I thought it was Wednesday. But we've got plenty to talk about today. More upsets in the NFL. Crazy game last night. A lot of emotional reactions to it online. I was watching with my wife, and it was funny because the whole time watching Eagles Falcons, I was thinking about our folks here on Guerrilla Sports Off Field. Nate Jackson, Liv Moods, Brandon Cristal. As they were signing off, they were all kind of making jokes about the game last night and like, oh, what are you going to take the Falcons in that one? I hope somebody did, because Kirk Cousins and the Falcons took care of business last night. We'll talk a little bit about that and then some of the decisions on the Philadelphia Eagles sideline that went into that result. More viewership numbers, breaking records. And again, it's nothing we're going to spend a long time on, but we'll touch on that as well. We're waiting on some news from the WNBA right now. I'm kind of continually checking here to see, so I apologize if you'll see me kind of looking down every now and then, but we're waiting on some potential breaking news out of the WNBA. More updates on the venue and Fubo lawsuit. We've got the MLBPA getting involved legally with some gambling sites, we'll call them. Sidney Crosby update, contract update, and then some fun, exciting uniform news out of Washington for the Washington Capitals. We are going to get into all of that today, this morning. And then we've got Megan Angley, JJ Jerez back in town. We are talking all things Colorado Avalanche, NHL, as main camps open tomorrow around the National Hockey League. We got Media Day for the Avs coming up at 4 p.m. tomorrow. We will be there live with Guerrilla Sports, bringing you guys all that great coverage from there as we are getting into full swing with the NHL season. So we've got a lot coming up this week and a lot to talk about. We'll have Brandon Cristal out in Tampa covering the Broncos game along with Nate Jackson. So like I said, we've got a lot coming up, but let's get into things from this morning as I quickly make one last quick check to see if I've got that WNBA news yet. And we are, I'm going to keep that near the bottom of the rundown to see if we don't get to that breaking news before the show is out. But let's start things off. Monday Night Football last night. Falcons, Eagles, like we were saying. Eagles heavily favored coming into this game. Not just heavily favored coming into this game, but again, one of these teams that preseason favorites. Eagles, for the last handful of years, have been one of the teams picked to go deep, even Super Bowl favorites, if not for Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, probably much higher up on that list. But either way, this is a team with high expectations, playing against an Atlanta Falcons team that is kind of on the opposite end of that spectrum. Not really much expected of the Falcons. But don't tell them that, as last night, they pull off the upset, 23-22, knocking off the Philadelphia Eagles. And wouldn't you know it, Nick Sirianni, coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, really kind of celebrated for what he's done with that Philadelphia Eagles team, considered a smart coach by a lot of pundits, other coaches, people in football. He made a bad call. And you know what? I double checked myself because as soon as I because I have it in my notes here, is 23-22. That sounded wrong. The minute I said it out loud, it was 22-21. Excuse me. Wrote that down wrong. But highly questionable call coming late in the game, under 2 minutes left. There's a 3rd and 3 in the red zone for the Eagles, and conventional wisdom said, keep the ball on the ground. The Falcons were out of timeouts. They were helpless to stop the clock when time was on the side of the Eagles. And instead of putting the ball in the hands of Saquon Barkley on the ground, instead they kind of run a cheeky little play and try to hit Barkley out wide to pick up a few easy yards, keep the clock running, potentially even get the first down. Dropped the ball. Saquon Barkley was, I mean, by all accounts, by everything that we could see, wide open. You can even see it here in this frame. There's really not many white jerseys around him. Watching the replay, it even looks like Saquon kept his eye on the ball, not like he turned to go upfield. He is among the league leaders for running backs in dropped passes since 2018, more than 20 dropped balls for Saquon Barkley, and this was a costly one. Not only did it push them to 4th down, but it stopped the clock. Philadelphia kicked the field goal to put them up by 6. And then Kirk Cousins took over. Marched the Falcons right down the field for a game-winning drive. I was actually watching the Manning cast at this point in the game, and it was so funny because Peyton Manning, former Falcons quarterback Matt Ryan, and Eli Manning were there, and they said, look, this is one of those situations where you've got to continue to move the ball forward. You can't have any negative plays. You got to keep moving the ball forward. And at some point in your first 4 plays, you got to get a big gash. You got to get 20-plus yards on one of the plays to move the ball upfield. It was almost like Kirk Cousins had them in his ear and executed what they were saying to perfection. Move the ball upfield, no negative plays, got the clock stopped a couple of times. One big play for 30-plus yards helped get the Falcons into scoring position. They took a couple quick plays that kept the clock stopped. We got under 40 seconds before they finally punched it in. Peyton Manning was actually worried that Kirk Cousins had moved too efficiently down the field and was going to give the Falcons, these birds of prey playing each other, just killing me. We're going to give the Eagles an opportunity and enough time to march back down and kick a field goal. That was not the case. Jalen Hurts throws an interception on 1st down, and that was it. Falcons were able to run the clock out. Big upset here in week 2, probably the biggest upset of week 2, and one of the bigger upsets that we've seen in the first couple weeks of the NFL season. Again, they were joking about it on the show yesterday. I hope someone took Falcons money line at least. They were massive underdogs coming into last night's game, and for them to be able to pull it out in dramatic fashion the way that they were, made for a fun game, made for an exciting game. But look, there was an obvious play call mistake on that Philadelphia sideline from their head coach. Here's what he had to say after the game, quote, "They were running a certain defense, junking up the middle." It's from Nick Sirianni. "So we were trying to go around the outside and it didn't work." What's got to be frustrating for him is if you watch that play and you watch the play design, it kind of did work. Saquon Barkley was wide open. He just dropped the ball. And again, you can't put it all on him, right? This is one of those classic situations where it's like, well, why did you let, if the Eagles were truly as good of a team and that much better than the Falcons, why did you let them hang around for so long? Why were they even in the game in position to score, to take the lead with a touchdown with under a minute to go? So yes, they went wide, didn't work, didn't pan out. Nick Sirianni, again, like I said, this is a coach that is highly regarded around the league and with football media. Made a bad call. It cost him one game. We'll see if the Eagles can bounce back and overcome this. Again, it's not quite like college football where one bad loss to a weak opponent early in the season can doom you for the rest of the season. Still plenty of time for the Eagles to bounce back. Quickly, sticking with the NFL, this is a game that we talked a little bit about yesterday. Kansas City Chiefs with the walk-off field goal to beat the Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday afternoon. This was in the afternoon slate of games here in the Mountain Time Zone, 2:25 start time. So this was not a primetime game. This was not the Sunday night game. This was just a regular Joe Burrow going head-to-head with Patrick Mahomes in a game that the Cincinnati Bengals looked like they had a chance to close out and win at several different points. Couldn't quite get it done. Allowed the Kansas City Chiefs back in the game and allowed them to, like I said, kick a walk-off field goal. But the reason I'm talking about this again today, that game, again, your average Sunday afternoon game, as terms of broadcasting window, average 27.9 million viewers on CBS. This was CBS's most watched NFL game since 1998. So forget pre-pandemic records or post-pandemic. Since 1998, this is a legitimate high water mark for CBS and the NFL. And this just shows, I said it yesterday, the Kansas City Chiefs continue to feel and look like the NFL's team of destiny year over year. And this is just another testament to the power of the Kansas City Chiefs. And dare I say Taylor Swift as well? But 27.9 million viewers, CBS's most watched NFL game in more than 2 decades. Again, we talked about it last week. The viewership just continues to come back. Streaming, I'm sure, has been a huge boon for this as well. People being able to access the games, not just through standard cable, but you've got, your YouTube TV options, Sunday Ticket being available through YouTube. A lot of the CBS games are available on Paramount Plus. There's a lot of different options, a lot of different ways to get your sports right now. And it's just making it more accessible. These networks have understood cord cutting is just a reality of this industry right now, and they found other ways to distribute, and it is leading to, it seems like every time I host this show, there's another viewership record that we're talking about being knocked down. So 27.9 million viewers on average for the Chiefs Bengals on Sunday, as we just continue to see those numbers fall. And let's not stray too far from that conversation. Venue Sports and Fubo TV, something that we have talked about a lot on this program, have gotten their court date, and it is set for late October, as these two will meet in court after Fubo argued and got a judge to grant an injunction based on the allegation made by Fubo that Disney and ESPN, Fox Sports, and Time Warner control as much as, and what they claim, because the court document said 51%, but both Fubo claimed and then the judge agreed that real figures are actually probably closer to 60%, that though Disney, ESPN, Fox Sports, and Time Warner control as much as 60% of the market when it comes to sports broadcasting rights. Fubo says that Venue, quote, would greatly limit consumer choice in the long run. As you can imagine, Venue came out and has pushed back on that in these last couple days, saying, quote, we believe that Fubo's arguments are wrong and on the facts and the law, and that Fubo has failed to prove it is legally entitled to a preliminary injunction. That's a joint statement from Disney, Fox, and Warner Brothers. They also said, quote, Venue Sports is a pro-competitive option that aims to enhance consumer choice. We talked about this last week as we knew that we were getting closer and closer to a trial date. If you remember, when this injunction was first filed, Venue and the 3 companies argued that an injunction like that would kill the joint venture. They wouldn't be able to move forward with it. Well, as of right now, it sounds like the 3 companies are pretty much staying band together and are trying to push this through and trying to argue that what Fubo is saying is not correct. That, again, in fact, Venue would increase options for consumers. And again, they made the argument that we talked about last week. Fox Sports in particular came out and said, look, if someone cancels their cable subscription in order to get Venue Sports, we lose money on that. because that means they're no longer getting our affiliated channels. They're not getting our Fox News channel and anything regional that they're entitled to. So we are losers if people are cutting the cord strictly to go to Venue Sports. That was the argument that Venue in this joint venture was making. They were saying we are targeting people who have already moved on from models like Fubo or traditional cable, saying, I don't want this full entire package. I just want the select few channels that I want. And these three companies have gotten together and said, cool, we're going to package those up for you. That's the argument Venue Sports is going to try to make at this hearing in October, saying we're trying to do the opposite of what Fubo is laying out, saying that we're trying to eliminate options. No. We're trying to give an additional option for people who are tired of this type of model where they have to take a whole bunch of channels that they don't want and just want the dozen or a little bit more channels that they truly want. We are trying to provide that direct to the consumer. We own the rights to these channels and these networks. We can do with them what we please. That will be Venue's argument, more or less, paraphrasing, obviously. But Fubo is going to try to continue to argue that's their argument that says, hey, if you are going to roll out a product like that, you need to offer a package similar to that to us to be able to offer to our customers as well. That's going to be the argument that Fubo tries to make. This is one that I am watching closely. Venue Sports cannot launch their app until this is resolved in court. So there is also the part of this that you just kind of have to point out. Fubo is clearly a beneficiary of this continuing to be kicked down the road further and further into the NFL season. With every week that goes by, that is another week that was not offered on Venue Sports. So companies like the companies really who are involved in the other side of this lawsuit, they are benefiting greatly from this continuing to be pushed out further and further as we await court dates. So like I said, I'll be keeping an eye on this one very closely as we get further into the NFL season and as we inch closer to the start of NHL and then a couple weeks later, NBA. It'll be right around the start of the NBA season that this court date will actually happen. Assume we don't have any more delays or anything like that would keep this from going to court now. We'll be watching this one very closely here. I'm going to take a quick Twitter break here to see if we've gotten this WNBA announcement. And if we haven't, I'll just let you guys in on what's going on out there. Nothing yet. But let's talk a little bit about what we are waiting for and anticipating from the WNBA. They are expanding from 14 teams to 16 teams. We are waiting on this news. They are putting out pretty clear teasers this morning saying that today is going to be the day of the announcement. And the WNBA X account has even kind of been goading on some reporters and insiders saying, what, anybody got any leaks? Any leaks to announce on what's happening here? A lot of the reports right now are that Portland is one of the cities receiving some mixed reviews. Of course, you have the obvious rivalry there with the Seattle Storm. If you put a team in Portland, you got the pretty natural Pacific Northwest rivalry brewing there. But we will keep an eye as there's a lot of people out there saying that there are much better markets potentially around for the WNBA. So again, no news quite yet to report on this other than it's pretty clear the WNBA will be adding 2 teams coming on the heels of their historic season in terms of viewership and revenue driven primarily by Caitlin Clark. Yes, young players like Angel Reese and Aja Wilson, not a rookie, but, there's high-end talent in the WNBA, but there is no denying the Caitlin Clark effect and how that has impacted the WNBA's ability to operate at a little bit of a bigger tick, get some larger television and broadcasting deals, and now sounds like add 2 additional teams. Excited to see what cities they are. A lot of support online for Denver to get a WNBA team as they continue to grow. We'll be watching this one, and if we get some news before the end of the show, we will make sure to plug that in. But let's shift gears a little bit here. Over the last few weeks, we've talked an unfortunate amount of times about DraftKings being dragged into the courtroom over unwinnable games, different lawsuits. They didn't pay enough out in advertisement to a group that they were supposed to. Well, they're back in the news, and this time it's not just them. Basically, every sportsbook app is being targeted right now by the MLBPA for using player likeness and names without the MLB and the MLBPA's permission. According to the filing, the sites began featuring images of players on their betting platform earlier this year, despite not having the license for those images. These are primarily showing up in same-game parlays and prop bets where you can find the players. And again, it's showing their images. And the MLBPA is making the argument that you really don't need to show the player images. They don't do it for NFL. They've cited a couple other sports where they don't do it. And they said, we're not really sure why they're doing it here when they don't have the rights to. From the MLBPA, let's see here. Quote, MLB player names, images, and likenesses are also featured prominently in advertising on both DraftKings Sportsbook and Bet365 social media, including in posts encouraging customers to place bets on the featured player. The MLB is arguing, the MLB and the MLBPA are arguing that those sites do not have the rights to do that, especially when it comes to the advertising, encouraging bettors to get on their app and bet on the player that is being advertised in the photo. You're not allowed to do this. Again, it does in different parts of these filings. Sometimes it lists names, sometimes it lists images, sometimes it lists both. I imagine the names portion of it is more pertaining to what we're seeing in what we just read there in terms of the advertising side of it, and not so much the in-game betting, because you got to have their names, right? For the in-game betting, the way that I read through this lawsuit last night and this morning is that they don't want them using the images of the players in the app. And then when it comes to advertising, basically saying you don't really have the rights to much to advertise with our players, our player names and likenesses, etc. So again, this is one that's not just targeted at DraftKings. This is DraftKings, FanDuel, Bet365, Underdogs Sportsbook, pretty much all of the major players here in North America, specifically the U.S., are part of the target for this MLBPA lawsuit. This will be another interesting one to see how it plays out in court, because it depends on how the ruling falls based on the wording of this lawsuit. Again, are we going to get into a sticky situation here where you're going to have number 18 listed in the app instead of a player's name? I'm not sure. I don't think that's what the PA is necessarily arguing for here, but I do think they absolutely have a leg to stand on when it comes to the advertisement. You cannot use player names and likenesses to advertise to go bet on that player if you don't own the rights to their name or likeness, or at least have been given the right to use their name and likeness. Another interesting one. Again, the sports gambling community, we knew that not that this would necessarily happen, that we'd see lawsuits falling and things like that, but we always knew that there was going to be some hurdles to get through as the sports betting market rapidly continues to explode here in the U.S. Shifting over to the NHL, like I mentioned, main camps are opening this week, and there was a lot of conversation. Sidney Crosby, would he get that extension done before the season started? The answer is yes. Let's talk a little bit about That's not Sidney Crosby. It's the GOAT, Sidney Crosby. There he is. For my money, the best player in the history of hockey, the greatest hockey player of all time, the most well-rounded player in the history of the game. Sidney Crosby was due for a new contract after his long-term deal that he signed before a new CBA that put in limits that you could only sign an 8-year maximum deal. Sidney Crosby's deal is due to expire at the end of next year. He's been making an average of an average annual value of $8.7 million to go with his number 87 on the back of his jersey. But a lot of people were wondering, all right, getting near the end of his career, what kind of raise does Sidney Crosby get? Because pretty much everyone universally agreed he is still a top 5, top 10 at absolute worst player in the NHL. And he's still got multiple quality years ahead of him. With the way that salaries have risen in the NHL, a lot of people were looking at this, including myself, saying, well, where does he fall? He's not going to get the McDavid or probably even the McKinnon contract, but what, 10, 10.5? They can maybe go 10.87 to make it happen. Sidney Crosby signs a 2-year extension at his exact same $8.7 million AAV. When asked why, he said winning is the most important thing to him. In fact, here's what he said about the contract extension when he was asked, why didn't you try to get more?
Highest paid player? Or even go above sort of that value?
I don't know. I think, winning is the most important thing to me. And I think understanding the dynamic and how it works and trying to give, the team the best possible chance to be successful. And ultimately you got to go out there and do your best and do your job. So, I think I'm more focused on that than the number, I guess. But that's just something that's my approach, and that's how I've always kind of seen it.
He's a winner. He's a winner, folks. 3 Stanley Cups, Olympic golds, pretty much every individual award you could think of. And you go back to when he was younger, World Juniors and things like that. Part of the reason why I think he's the greatest player of all time. He understands what it takes to win. And they're in a tough spot in Pittsburgh. The team is definitely on a little bit of a slide. It looks like they're falling out of true contention. That's part of what fueled some of the speculation surrounding, was it possible that Sidney Crosby could move on from the Pittsburgh Penguins in free agency next summer and potentially go looking for another team to contend for a championship with? I know it led to a lot of excitement here in Colorado. A lot of folks thinking that maybe his Cole Harbor connection with Nathan McKinnon could lead to him wanting to come play with Nate. Chase a cup in Colorado. Doesn't sound like that's happening this year. I don't think you can rule it out completely. As you heard Sidney Crosby say here, he wants to win. That is what matters to him. He wants to win every year, and he wants to win every Stanley Cup. So he took less money so the team could remain flexible as the cap continues to rise to try to bring in players that would get them back to a competitive state. I think he's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on, because if it's clear this year and part of the way through next year that if that's not possible in Pittsburgh, I do think the way that these contract negotiations went, I do think there's an opportunity that the Pittsburgh Penguins could say, we are going to send you somewhere to try to win a Stanley Cup. And by the way, get a king's ransom in return. Big shout out to Sidney Crosby, one of my favorite players in the game, and I think the greatest of all time. We're going to cap things off with an iconic photo of his rival, his longtime rival. It's well documented now. They're great friends now. They get along very well. But rookies in the same year, Alex Ovechkin, Sidney Crosby. This photo circulating today. The Caps are bringing back the black and blue Screaming Eagle jersey, as they are fondly referred to. You can see in the bottom image there, they recreated the photo from Ovechkin's rookie year. The image on the bottom that you're seeing right here is what the jerseys will be this year. These are the alternate jerseys. Only wear them a handful of times, not in every game, but met by great fanfare. I remember these clearly growing up as a kid. This was the Washington Capitals. They were the black, copper, and blue. Alex Ovechkin scored his iconic goal from his back in his rookie year in these jerseys. I think it's fun to see. Just wanted to make sure we mention them very briefly before the end of today's show. But I think that's going to do it for today. Not without one last quick check to see. We've gotten the news here out of the WNBA. Nothing yet. We'll keep an eye on it. We'll have our very own Liv Moods bringing you guys an update as that comes in. But that is going to do it for today. We've got Off Ice coming up this afternoon. JJ Jerez is back there, hanging loose, coming back from Hawaii. What a dick. Him and Megan Angley back in town. So we'll be talking about everything in the lead up to Avs main camp for tomorrow, plus everything that Megan learned this past weekend at the Rookie Face-Off in LA. I'm excited, you guys. I'm really excited to get back into the swing of things starting tomorrow. So we'll have all kinds of great stuff to talk about coming up for you guys this afternoon. That's going to do it. Hope you guys have a great day. We'll be back at it tomorrow. Well, that'll be me or Jay. I'm not sure. We'll be back at it tomorrow, bringing you guys everything from around the world of sports here. First thing in the morning, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, Guerrilla Sports Daily. Thanks so much for hanging out, guys.